I'm going to be accused of copium-like things again this week. So, the way that the chapter ended with the whole treasure hunter, that to me is the weirdest part of the chapter, and probably the weirdest thing we've gotten in a while. Because it's not the same thing, but it does feel a little bit like the Altaface thing, whereas like Altaface just kind of happened and then kind of ended. It wasn't like it was more something that, like, yeah, I could see this kind of making sense with like the connections with things like Face and like how they're not fully separate worlds. They're kind of alternate things and alternate timelines and alternate worlds within their universe and multiverse and all those things. So it's like, yeah, I could see that, like, this existing in some form of parallel to another thing. Okay, cool. But it was just really weird because it seemed more like it existed just so it's like, okay, well, they're not going to be dealing with Selene, so we need them to deal with somebody, so they just put him out there. And the treasure hunter guy, he feels a little bit like that too. And I mentioned that it's a little weird to have a character like this in this scenario because it's not like going into like, okay, they show up in a town, some form of new place, some form of adversaries that they're gonna have to go against. They're in the Dogre Labyrinth, so they already have the adversarial level that they're like all kind of set at. We have like all these members of Diabolos and whatnot. We have Dogremag and whatnot, just kind of like going about his business. So a random treasure hunter, like, he just feels like out of place. Not in a way that it doesn't make sense for him to be here, because obviously with the whole labyrinth, the treasure hunter showing up makes a lot of sense. But when you look at like where this guy is at in terms of like strength and relevancy in the story, unless he's gonna throw surprises to everybody next chapter, I feel like he's just gonna end up getting pretty much fodderized for someone like Scolion or something to be relevant again, to make a comeback, because the treasure hunters have never been that strong in the verse. Obviously, like, you're using like weaponry and whatnot, and they seem to have a level of just kind of superhuman abilities, but nothing close to like what big people with magic or curse power or spiritual arts have. It doesn't just seem to be the case. And we still could get, I mentioned that we could get like, okay, yeah, a treasure hunter, like say like the top treasure hunter in the world is at level with like relevant people. I would imagine not with like the Dark Dragon Slayer Knights, but like people more to like Gray, where he's like in a good solid like middle to like leaning in the direction towards the upper Spriggan people. Nothing kind of crazy, but still within range where it's like, yeah, I could see like some character who sits at like the peak for his whole classification within the verse being at least for the most part relevant in strength. I can see that. But other than that, I don't really see how this guy's going to be any form of threat to Gray. Like, I feel like Gray should have no problem just sniping this Dogre core before this guy even gets a chance. And like, what's going to stop him from just flash freezing this guy and just completely taking him out like immediately? Because I just see it's like it would make sense if we had, say, like, oh, Scolion dusted this dude, consumed his ashes, got his magic and stamina back, and then went to go fight Gray. Because I've been mentioning, since we've had this whole setup with the cores, that there has to be some form of adversarial force for the main cast and them, pretty much just to get pushback on. Because otherwise it's just going to be them getting teleported to each of these cores, destroyed, and we get to like Dogremag and Suzaku Natsu's fights with a quick resolve. Because we know that Dogremag just seems to be invincible while the cores are up, but it's not going to really matter if they just casually going to stroll over and wreck each of them. And I think there are degrees of sense for like the enemies that should be still against them versus on their side. Like, I think people like Haku and Kyria logically would want to align up with the Fairy Tail members. Like, I think Kyria should have a level of respect for Lucy now, and Haku, obviously having his crush on Wendy, should see an opportunity to advance, like, hopefully his affections towards her, and maybe try and get a better footing in her opinion of him. Whereas like Misaki and Scolion, I can easily see staying enemies and wanting to go against like the Fairy Tail members. But as of right now, I mean, like the treasure hunter dude is just the weirdest part. Like, it was something that, like, out of everything else in the chapter, I could have looked at me like, okay, yeah, this makes sense to me. This makes sense. Like, but it's like a random treasure hunter at the end was just such a out of left field kind of thing. It just makes you wonder, like, what exactly is the plan for this guy? Because I don't imagine he's going to be a long-running character or somebody really that important. He just seems to be like a character that exists and is somebody that is going to be existent for all of a minute or two. Like I just feel like I look at this guy's design and look how it's not anything crazy, and it just makes me think that he's gonna end up getting foddered for whatever reason. Like I said, to kind of get Scullion juiced up or something, because I mean, who else is really there for like enemies for like the Fairy Tail members to be pushed back upon? And who are the members that are the most able to fight right now? Because when you look at everybody, Urza obviously is still hurt, still recovering. So is Lucy, Laxus, Wendy. The two people that are at their best are Godchill and Gray. So having Scullion and Mad Bull finally get their time maybe would make, I think, a lot of sense up and coming. Whereas other people, because like when you look at it, and I've mentioned this before, I think this makes a lot of sense. When you look at the other Dragon Eaters and you look where they're at, and not even that, like just Dragon Slayers in general, the ones, I mean Godchill too, but like the ones out of the enemy side that have the best opportunity for like recovery are Scullion and Mad Bull, because this is a treasure hunting labyrinth where tons of people have come and died. You're gonna find armor and you're gonna find corpses all throughout it. So like they logically have a way to get their magic and stamina back. And as well as like I could see this dude getting dusted, Scullion absorbing the ashes and then just getting back up. Maybe like whatever his art, like maybe he's got like an armored suit or something under there, and Mad Bull would eat it. I don't know, because it's like I've mentioned, it's a really weird spot for them, and it's a really weird spot for like where things are at, just because there has to be some form of pushback on this whole event, on the whole like go to destroy the Dogre cores, and like unless it's just gonna be creatures that Dogremag made, but I think it makes a lot more sense to kind of like split up Diabolos, so some that are on Fairy Tail side and some that are still against them, because some of them I feel like would want to take an opportunity while Celine's hurt to try and take her down, get revenge for Georg and whatnot. So in the next chapter, I'm really just hoping we have like a quick resolve for this treasure hunter dude. I really don't want to sit on this too much. Like, unless the treasure hunter guy is going to actually be pretty strong and pretty capable, I don't really want to spend too much time with him. If they're going to surprise me and have say, like, he's part of the top treasure hunting crew, well, it would make sense. It's like, oh, yeah, this is, like, the pretty much the peak of treasure hunting is the Dogre Labyrinth or something along those lines. And then have, like, oh, yeah, we're the peak of our group. Kind of like how when they were doing the Sun Village and then Sun Village bit, we had the whole reveal that's like, oh, there was a treasure hunter equivalent to the Grand Magic Games. What if there's a treasure hunter equivalent for the 100 Years Quest, but it's the Dogre Labyrinth? I think that would make a lot of sense. And then have for whatever reason, these guys are going to be in here, they can be relevant. I don't really feel like they could be like strength relevant wise. Like I'd be really surprised if this guy could fight Gray. But otherwise, I feel like it's like you get to people like Scullion or Mad Bull, get the treasure hunter dude aside if he's not going to be relevant, like pretty early in the next chapter. That's one of those things. Like it's like when we got like the Lucy's arm cut. The thing I really wanted for that was just like I want to see how this plot line either resolved or really kind of continued. I didn't want it to be kind of like teetered around with, and that's kind of how I feel with like the whole treasure hunter bit. I either want Gray to deal with this guy fast, or this guy to really kind of put up some effort and really show that he's capable and going to put in some work. But anyway, other than that, no, comment below. Thumbs up the video, friendly, like button, subscribe button, check out my other videos. But that, appreciate all these arts, subscribe, and thank you all for listening. Excuse me, cat. Bye.